Ah, Abigail? Okay, I apologize for all that you are hearing or not hearing or seeing on the chat. Like I said, I do apologize. This is sort of one of those times where you have sort of all your worst nightmares coming together all at once. It's like that bad dream where you end up somewhere running around in your pajamas or your underwear. So again, I do apologize for our technical difficulties. Believe it or not, we did log on a half an hour beforehand and try to work this all out. So we are going to move ahead, and I'm going to introduce myself. This is Amy Stone, and I'm the Director of Development and Membership in St. Louis, Missouri. And thank you so much. This is my my webinar, and I'm so thank you for all of you who stuck around through our little technical difficulties. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, thank you for joining us. This is a webinar on donor stewardship and the role of the executive director, and thank you. So just so you know, you're all on the right webinar today. So as I was trying to prepare for today's session, I spent a lot of time with many development directors and executive directors and working with them. Asking about their experiences, their best practices, if you will. I combed the internet, I read some articles, I gathered information from great workshops, I read a book. Okay, it was a small book, but I read it and I want to share it with you later. So this talk today is a collection of all that was gathered from these amazing individuals that so graciously have shared their stories, their situations with me, and coupled with a little bit of my own. So first of all, full disclosure, besides the technical difficulties, this is a full disclosure that I'm not going to be able to teach you everything there is to know about development and fundraising. Hopefully, though, we can start a conversation about our roles and how we can work together. If you are an executive director who doesn't have a director of development, maybe today you'll learn something, and at the very least, you will have a colleague, me, Amy Stone, here's my information, that you can bounce some ideas off when something new comes your way. I'm very accessible. For some of this will be new information. For others, perhaps it will reinforce some of the knowledge that you have. But I hope for wherever you are on the scale that you will gain some benefit. I will leave time at the end of this webinar to answer your questions, and you can see from here, this is my contact info, and I will give it again at the end of the session as well. Like I said, feel free to contact me if you have questions or want to bounce some ideas off of me. Another thing I want to add, I know working with your development director or as a development director is only one part of your job. And if you're like my executive director, you probably walk around with a fire extinguisher strapped to you all day, putting out fires. So I hope that for you, this time will be well spent and that these tips will help us work better together. Just as all of our cities have diverse flavors of culture, so do our synagogues. What would be normal in one congregation might not be conceived in another. One congregation might be filled with political boundaries between the staff and the clergy, and another will almost have no boundaries. So please, as you go through this webinar today, I ask that you pick and choose what works best for you and your congregation. The executive director and the development director, here's our compare and contrast of our roles. So the executive director and the development director are joined together by a number of forces. One being that they both need to be organizationally centered. A good development director will work hard to focus on the donor and keep that relationship at the center. This person must have must make sure the donor's needs and their intentions are met within the synagogue. And the development director has the burden to find the money. A good executive director will ensure that the mission of the congregation is effectively fulfilled and the day-to-day operations of the organization are met. Do's and don'ts. Here's a couple of things. I think it's critical for the executive director to grant authority to your development director so that he or she can do what's needed to get done. They need to be seen in the eyes of the donors as someone who can get things done. The donors do not want to talk to the middleman. If you do not recognize this, really, if you do not recognize this, your development director needs to handle things on their own, and that they must, then you are setting your development director up for failure. If one of my donors calls me and wants to bring his entire out-of-town family for the high holidays, I don't have time, or they don't have time for me to call and get approval. I need to be able to say, of course, get their names, send their name badges, and get them directly to them. If there's a big donor wielding power, an attempt to substantiate leverage and expecting the development director to respond to these demands, the executive director must grant authority to the development director to handle the situation, or to level confidence, or their level of confidence will be diminished. Sometimes I've had donors call me and there needs to be an adjustment to their bill, or if there's a shortage in a stock transfer, I need to be able to take that off, and I need to be able to have that authority and make that happen on the spot. Another very important role of the executive director is to work with the board. I have slides coming up that will talk about that more in depth. It only seemed natural that conflicts should arise, or could possibly arise, between the executive director and the development director. If one is donor-oriented and one is mission or an organization-driven. However, this is where the magic happens. Sharing the power is never easy, but hopefully you guys are a team, and you can become a team. It will make for clear communication and mutual respect to make this balance work. But if you work to see each other's position and sort of see the left side and the right side working together, you'll eventually get on the same page. I believe that you should be a believer. I believe the executive director has to be a believer in the mission. The energy and the passion comes from the top down. If you exude this and believe what you have in the synagogue is special, it will radiate from your office. Your staff will feel it, your development director will feel it, the congregation will feel it, and the donors will feel it. And this will make your fundraising easier for you and your team. I think another really big important thing, and this was sort of given to me from another development director, it's sort of simple courtesy, but I think you should introduce your development director to everyone. I think when you have the opportunity, I think you should do so. I think you should show the congregation that you're proud of your development director, and your development director is someone that they need to get to know. And vice versa, if it's not a development director and you don't have a development director, I think you can substitute that name for the chair of your development committee. I think you can interchange these names. This will help it open doors for your development director and make it easier for them to call on members of your congregation. I think you should understand, I think it's important not just as the executive director, but if the executive director understands it, then I think the whole staff should understand that everything in your building has to do with development, and that your development director should have a little to do with everything in the building. For example, if your parking lot has the best 20 spots closest to the building taken up for your clergy and your staff, it's pretty hard to find your best, most frequent congregants that visit your building. It's hard for them to find a spot. I think that's something that your development director should take notice of, because that doesn't make your congregation very warm and welcoming to your congregants. And equally as important, if somebody comes to me with a concern for a teacher in the religious school, I need to get involved with that and have a conversation with the director of education over the religious school. I was told by a friend of mine who is a professional fundraiser that I must have a finger in every part of the building. Now, that doesn't mean I have a say in every part of the building, but I have to have a knowledge of every little part of the building. And it's important that like I said, it's important for the staff to know that they have a role in that development as well. I also believe that you shouldn't second guess each other in public. I kind of was taught this from my mom and dad. You don't correct each other in public. If you have a question, you want to challenge each other in different ways of thinking, the place to do it is behind closed doors. One of the things that my executive director does, like every time before we have a meeting, he calls me and says, what do I need to know? And at first, I wasn't sure how to take this phone call, but then now I look forward to this phone call before every meeting. It's our chance to sort of touch base with each other in case there's something that I haven't had a chance to fill him in on. It's our time to touch base. Like I said, he needs to know the good, the bad, about all the congregants, the volunteers, and the donors, and he needs to know it from me first. I believe that all aspects of fundraising should run through the development office. It makes sense that all matters concerning this department go through one location. You shouldn't be asking the same congregants for money at from different locations. I don't turn away small fundraisers from different parts of the congregation, but I simply ask that they come through me. We actually calendar all of our organizations through my department to maximize their impact as well. Here's where we're going to talk about the Board of Trustees. We have, you can call them whatever you want. I think the subject today is talking about the role of the executive director and the donor stewardship, and I think the first place you can start with that is your board. I read this great book. This is the book I was telling you about. I read a great book. I was intrigued by the board, for the board, and it's called, and how it runs. Let me back up. I was intrigued by the board and how it was run, so I read this book. It was called The Ultimate Board Members Book, and it's published by Emerson & Church. And I highly recommend this book. It's about literally a 60-minute read. You will race right through it, and if you can afford to buy this book for everybody on your board, I would try to do that. It lays out everyone's role in the quickest, most direct manner. I fully believe that once everyone knows where their boundaries are, what their responsibilities are, everyone is better off. So philanthropy starts with your boards. Fundraising starts with your boards. Support for all new projects starts with your boards. You need to have 3 types of people on your boards. You can call it the 3 A's or the 3 W's, affluence, access, advocacy, or wealth, wisdom, and work. And you need to populate your board with people who will bring these things to the table. Not every person will, can, or should have all 3 of these things, but you need to keep these things in mind when you're trying to find these people. And the executive director is a major player in the role of the board. This is probably the biggest thing you can do in your role as executive director. If I say it's indispensable role, I don't think that's an overstatement. Your role is to make sure that the board members don't become bored, B-O-R-E-D. Members, and that they remember that they are on this sacred journey with your congregation. Setting expectations for your board. So Joe Batten, who wrote Tough-Minded Leadership, tells us that we constantly judge people based on what we expect from them, but the problem is that we never actually bother to tell them what we wanted from them in the first place. So first and foremost, let people know what you expect them to fundraise before they join your board. You can't expect your board to become fundraising champions if you don't create a clear expectation of cultural of fundraising. And I believe that when you have a new board member join your board, they deserve to have a sit-down meeting with your president of the congregation, your executive director, and possibly your rabbi. If your rabbi plays a large role in your board, for us, this is the trio it would make. This is how it would work for us, maybe not for you. An ideal situation would be to explain to this newest potential board member what is expected of them and to present them with a job description outlining all that you require of them. Attend meetings, you're going to sit on a committee, we want you to fundraise, we need you to be a donor, we want you, of course, we want you to be an ambassador. However those expectations lay out for your congregation and what you ask of them, I think they need to see it laying out in a job description format. And I know some people have them sign it, which I think is a great idea, and that way you're all on the same page. I think also by sitting down and having these meetings, these one-on-one meetings, this is a great time to find out why they wanted to be on the board. You should make sure that they have time to be on your board, because you don't want to be just another line on their resume. What is their expertise? Find out, for instance, if they want what they want to do on your board has anything to do with their expertise. And what is their passion? What lights them up inside? This is a great time to sit and talk to them about why you have picked them over above everybody else. Tell them what you think makes them so special. This is their 15 minutes of fame. This is your chance to make them feel like they are a part of an elite club and they are on a chosen journey, because they are. Your congregation is in their hands. And this is the same thing that goes for any campaign that you're starting as well. Everybody gets a job description. It's important that everyone started on the same page, whether it be a capital campaign, an endowment campaign, an annual campaign, or even if you're putting together a large volunteer campaign. Fundraising is not only is a part of the fiscal responsibility. It's part of the gig. It's a skill that can be learned. Don't discredit folks as not being fundraising types. Being a successful fundraiser comes after being trained to be one. So that's my next point. Sometimes you're going to have to train your board members. With your oversight, or along with your development director, or perhaps you have people in your congregation that can help, I think you need to have you need to be able to teach your fundraisers, to teach those guys to be seasoned fundraisers. It would be one of their basic approaches. It's because being fully prepared when you speak to someone is really key. Because fundraising doesn't come natural to everyone. And even if it did, you got to practice. I'm going to take a second to say that later on in this webinar, we're going to address to prepare to solicit later on. But training as a whole is good to discuss with your board members, and it's a good idea to make sure that they feel comfortable. Because if you're going to ask them to fundraise, then you need to make sure that they're comfortable discussing the project and making the solicitation. However, truth be told, some people will never be good at asking. And allow them to decide which part of fundraising is a good fit for them. I wouldn't let them out of it completely, but I would definitely let them find an area that they're most comfortable in it. So why not ask them to, these ask-deficient fundraisers, these board members, to recruit potential donors. Ask them to invite people to events. Ask them to do something that's less daunting for them, and maybe ask them, maybe you can brainstorm with them. Also, I think this is so important, and I have learned this. I really have learned this. Do not neglect your introverts. Sometimes quieter board members can actually be some of your best fundraisers. Many of these people that you're asking for money from are introverts too. So strong extroverts and the more glib conversationalists, they may turn them off. Remember, and this is the honest to goodness truth no matter what. Remember this. If you get nothing out of this, write this down. Remember this. The best person to ask for the gift is the one who's going to get it. That's it. The person that has the best relationship is the best person to ask for the gift. And you want to ask yourself and your team, who is the best person to ask for the gift? It's not always the development director, trust me. Also, you don't need affluent connections. You just need to be good at connecting with people or how to learn to. Many people with no money to contribute to philanthropies don't display superficial social signals we associate with the wealthy. And also, one fundraiser, meaning one person, is not enough. So out there, everybody's asking. We all know that because we get our mail at home. Everybody is asking. So many, like I said, many institutions have hundreds of individuals manning their fundraising, and your temple will be at a disadvantage if board members don't join you with your fundraising efforts. Okay, And I'm just going to do this quickly because I want to make sure this is where I think everything needs to, everything needs to start. Gift acceptance policy. Every institution needs one. Every campaign needs one. You need to revisit it often. I would say annually. Your executive director and your development director can work closely to create one, and it will eventually be accepted by the board. I have samples that I can send you through the webinar. If you have samples, you should save them, keep them, sort of collect them. I would, even if they're outdated, I would absolutely make sure you keep them at all times. We can talk about that more later, but just make sure you keep your gift accepted policies and make sure you work on them. Okay, I fully believe that asking for money is a privilege. So a friend of mine a couple years ago, who was a professional fundraiser, invited me to this lunch and learn. And I'll be honest, I begrudgingly said yes because it was like a half an hour away from my office. The guest speaker, who was a man, his name was Jerry Panis. At the time, I'd never heard of him. It ended up being literally the best 2.5 hours ever. And if you ever get a chance to hear Jerry speak, I would recommend you do so. This is a quote. He has this book. It's called The Little Gold Book. He actually has 3 books of the Little Gold Books. They're $5 each. I think if you buy, you get a discount if you buy them more for your board or whatever. But this is one of the best little quotes. I love this. And I actually, as I say to myself as I read this, and that when I think about this every day as I solicit people, as I go about my job. I actually think about this quote as well. And I'm going to read it here to you today because I know part of it might be cut off. We who ask others to give are so immensely privileged. What else could we possibly be doing that is more rewarding, more fulfilling, and of greater consequence than asking men and women to join a noble cause? Through their investment, those who give make it possible to change lives and save lives. Those who ask for the gifts are doubly blessed. I am proud to be a partner with you in our journey. We touch and transform lives. We are the chosen ones. There's more to fundraising than this infamous ask. Your board can be part of the donor. Your donor can be part of either the identification process, cultivating potential donors, or stewarding existing donors to create donor loyalty. The ask is only one part of the process, even though it's very important. Identifying potential people at first should be easy. So go to the most bought-in people. Start asking for advice. Tell them about an upcoming project, and tell them how you feel about something that's happening, and ask them how you feel about something that's coming up in the congregation. You can ask them to join you for a high holiday honor. I would ask them to go to dinner with the rabbi. If you can go to lunch, coffee, dinner with the rabbi, get them involved somehow is probably the best way to do it. One of the best things that I find, and maybe I call this my sweet spot, is when I get angry people. So people call when they're angry, and I think that when they call and they're angry, I think it's good because it means they still care. And when they call and they're angry, I do whatever it takes to turn that anger around. I apologize till I'm blue in the face. I tell them that they now have a special insider here at UH, that no matter what is going on, they can come to me no matter what, and I will fix anything. And really, what problem am I really fixing? I'm making them feel better, right? This is a synagogue. It's not like I have a shoe department or an auto part department. I am fixing feelings here. So when they come to me, I fix it. This is a person who hasn't been here in 5 years because he's been angry, but now all of a sudden I'm making him feel better. I'm getting a seat up front for the high holidays and a discount on this Passover honey. But he thinks I've moved walls for him. And now I call him every few months. We go to coffee. I ask him about his family and his mom in Florida. And he makes a donation to UH, and all these things are good. You can do this. This is donor stewardship. It is customer service. So, and I saw somebody a couple months ago, I saw one of our donors on the front page of the paper making a big donation to another charity. And I cut it out, and I wrote them a note, what an amazing people they are, and how lucky our St. Louis community was to have them. And in my mind, I'm keeping an eye on them and who they're giving to. but these are called touches. And I know it takes time and energy to get to know these people, and it does not happen overnight. On to the next slide that I accidentally went to before. Okay. There were questions that some people had sent when you registered about the Legacy and Bequest campaign, and I wanted to just touch base for a brief moment about this type of campaign. It is, this is a very, very simple little bullet-pointed list about how to put together your Legacy campaign, and I know it's very simple. And it may seem really daunting at first to start, but trust me, I did this my first year at UH, and when you dive in, it's not, and I can help you with some paperwork that I have that I would be happy to share with you after this. Okay, so if you don't have a Legacy campaign, I think you should start one. You can start with a gift acceptance policy. You can get a lawyer to help you review it and look at it. You can create a name for your campaign. We are very original, and ours is called the Legacy Circle. You can maybe come up with something better than that. The only thing the donor has to do initially is to sign your commitment paper. You can go, first people to go to, your most committed congregants would be you, the development director, the rabbi, the president, the executive committee, the board. Thank everybody. Thank them all the time. In a year from now, have your Legacy Circle group join you for a ceremony. You can get, you could do it in a garden. You could do something nice. Thank them again. Invite the senior rabbi to come and speak to them. Another thing you want to do is you want to follow up, because the development director or the executive director, however you have it, has a right to see and to have a copy of the section of your will where it changes the beneficiary or it shows that they are listed in your will in the documents. You have a right to see that section and ask for it. Again, thank them. Thank them, thank them, thank them. And with their permission, you could recognize them in your bulletin. You can recognize them at public. We have had Shabbat services where we recognize them in a luncheon afterwards. Do not put their names on a plaque on a wall until the funds are transferred, because obviously wills are revocable. Okay. Like I said, I know it seems daunting. This is the first thing I did as a development director, and I doubled the size of my Legacy Circle in about 8 weeks, because I went out, I set a challenge for myself, and I did it. I literally did it in 8 weeks. I think 18 or 22 of them in about 8 weeks. So if I could do it my first year, I know you guys could do it as well. Okay, we're talking about cultivating a donor. So this is an example that I had, and I wrote it out here. We did a campaign here at United Hebrew. We did a capital and endowment campaign. I was in the middle of the fundraising part, and that was full swing. There was also, obviously, a construction, the capital part of it, and I was in charge of the construction part, which, full disclosure, I've never even renovated a bathroom in my house. So, and I was in charge of the construction. And I knew that I was in trouble when people started repeating things about the construction part, about the building, when they were listening to me. So I knew I had to get something better organized than that. So I found 4 people to help me, and one of them was this gentleman who was a commercial developer, not involved at UH, had never been involved at United Hebrew, had zero giving history at UH, but he felt sorry for me, I think. I asked him to coffee. I asked him to be involved. I knew that he was really good at his job and that he would help me. Our coffee turned into a 3-hour lunch. I engaged him for over a year with these monthly meetings with this little group of 4 people. And then not only did he help me through the construction part of the job, I also received a $25,000 gift from him. I solicited him for more, but we did end up receiving a $25,000 gift. He is now a board member, and I know that we have him engaged, and we will have him on the road further for more gifts as well. We now have him engaged. Okay, rules of engagement. As you go through, and if you're in a campaign or if you are in whatever you're coming up with, finding your donors and figuring out who they are and how you go through this process. Do you know who your donors are? That would be a good way to identify them, making sure you've identified your donors. Do you know how to rank your donors? A, B, C, D, and E. This is the amount that you wish to solicit them for, and you can base it on giving, history, and capacity. So what you think maybe you would like to ask them for, what range they might fall in, based on what is equal to where they have given in the past. Then you go into getting, I think every time you go to speak to somebody, you have to have a solicitation prep. You need to know, and you can use things like GuideStar. You have to know who the people are, where do they live, where are their assets, what do you know about them, and their family giving history and their family foundation. Also, hopefully maybe you've met with them prior and this is not the first meeting. And I think creating a script is so important, and everybody going needs to absolutely has to have a role when you go to speak to somebody. Prior to the solicitation meeting, you need to go, this is not a casual meeting. This is not just a casual conversation, even though it looks like. You need to make sure that you're prepared. What are your top priorities for the meeting? You will not get out of this with all your questions. You need to make sure that you know what has to be answered and what has to be asked. And you need to make sure, like I said before, the right person is making the ask. This is a slide that I put in there. I don't need to go through all of these, but great questions get great results. So during your conversation periods, during the times that you meet before or after, asking really great questions will get you the best answers. And a development director. So if you're looking for people that will serve on your development board, or if you're looking for people, if you don't have a development director and you're looking for people to serve on your development board, what makes a great development director? Somebody who's going to work behind the scenes. They must be a facilitator. They raise the money. So for example, for me, I work in the background. I move pieces around. My rabbi is the rock star. Not that people don't like me, but it's my rabbi they want to hear from. It's my rabbi they want to talk to, and my rabbi they want to go to dinner with. Say what you mean to say. Your development director must be able to say what has to be said. And you, that's the universal you, needs to listen. It's not always comfortable to hear what has to be said. However, the development director has to be able to speak the truth about what is being spoken. If I hear something that needs to be reported, it's my responsibility, it's my job to report on what I've heard, even if it's unpleasant and difficult to hear. The glass is half full. I have to be optimistic. The development director must be optimistic. It can be scary raising money. There's ways to safeguard your fundraising, but eventually you have to be optimistic and go for it. And when the campaign is a little slow, you have to have that glass is half full approach to get through it. Just do it. So my dad always told me when I was young, he wanted to see me like a duck. Head down, tail up. The development director never gives up. Trust your instincts. So no two fundraisers are ever alike. No two campaigns are alike. You have to ask yourself these questions. When is it precisely the right time to call somebody? When is it appropriate to talk instead of listen? When do you know whether or not to launch or try something new? You need to trust your instincts. And this is a little bitty development advice that I will give you right before we go into our questions. People say the best thing to do is to listen the gift, and I absolutely believe that that is key. Without a doubt, when you're listening to what your potential donor is passionate about or what they are interested in your organization, you may just find that sweet spot. Last week I had a meeting that lasted a little over an hour, and I probably didn't say 20 sentences. I had a written proposal. We knew why we were there, and I answered whatever questions they had, but they spoke the entire time. I took notes, and for the most part, we put together a plan that was right for this family right there on the spot. I was so proud for them. It was quite special. I could see at that moment that they had really come to a place together as a family, and I was privileged to be a part of it. However, I will tell you that that doesn't always work. I have found sometimes that they need to be encouraged to share ideas and talk. Plant a few nuggets, and that is when I talk the gift. I find out if I can keep them talking that they won't leave or hang up on me. And sometimes you find somebody who isn't ready to be open, or perhaps there's someone who has a little less than stellar experience with your organization. And if I can get them to talk to me, I can find out more about them. I can find out how they are feeling, if there's a problem, and if it can be fixed. And usually they end up, what they really want is they want to be heard. Last month I received a phone call from this really upset gentleman. So upset, he wouldn't let me speak. And I kept him talking. And eventually he ended up apologizing to me and offered to volunteer at UH as a volunteer. But you have to find what works best for you. There's so much great info out there. This has been a very smart part of your day, and I've only had a chance to share an hour with you, and I was so impressed that there were so many of you willing to engage with me. The question that you asked were really amazing. You want to help. That says to me that as a community at large, we've really engaged executive directors who want to succeed. So please, like I said before, contact me after this webinar, and I will do my best to help you with more specific questions. Or if I have documents to share, I will do so as well. I have 10 questions that you guys had sent me that I could run through, but I would be more than happy to answer some specific questions. Harvey, do you have any questions that came through?
So Amy, Amy, I want to thank you, and Deborah Siegel, who is the development director at Central Synagogue, has agreed to help with the Q&A. So I'd just like to unmute her mic and let her speak as well. She also has a wealth of experience. And Amy, I just want to thank you for your presentation. And for those who have been busy scribbling notes, I just want to let you know that we have recorded this webinar, and we will be posting it both to the NATA and the NATA listservs through Yammer and through the NATA listserv when this webinar is done.
And again,
Hi, Deborah.
I want to echo my thanks, Amy. This is Harvey Brenner for an excellent presentation, and I did copy down some questions that people want to ask you. The first is, you mentioned before that the development director needs some autonomy, that has to be able to make decisions on the fly, you know, when they're sitting with a potential donor or a person who's already given. And where are the boundaries in this, if there are any? Who sets them? And do you have an example or two of situations that could illuminate that?
So I don't get involved in programming when it comes to anything having to do with the clergy, obviously. And I don't get involved with programming when it comes to the religious school. I do get involved. I do make a decision when, financially speaking, I guess it's a gut instinct. I would have an example of I can manipulate people's dues. I can manipulate donors when we discuss with donors what they're when working with a program. I was trying to think if I have one. With how they want to lay out their plans. I think sometimes when people come to me with problems and what I can fix, I can't always fix everything on my own. Sometimes I do have to say I have to check with somebody on that if it's outside of my department, and they do understand that. But the authority, usually the authority has to do with financial things that I can control.
Do those decisions ever put you in conflict with the executive director or the board?
So far, no. So far, no.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think at the true heart of what my job is so far that I think my executive director and I are both on the same page. I mean, my job is to represent, I mean, I represent my donor and I take care of my donor, but I also at the heart, I really want to take care of United Hebrew. So I have to think of the magic as taking care of somewhere in between and making sure my donor is taken care of and that they're happy. But at the same time, I mean, I have a mission to uphold as well as taking care of the congregation and trying to make sure we're in between the two.
Thank you. I'm sure it's a difficult tightrope to walk at times, but you seem to be expert at it, and we'll try and emulate what you do. Here's another question, and these are in no particular order, so forgive me if I'm jumping around all over your presentation. How have you asked for the documentation that you alluded to in your with legacy donors? Because it could be a ticklish conversation to have, like, hey, show me your will.
Oh, so as a you honestly, I got the nerve when all of my development friends have told me that we have a right to ask. I think Deborah can say this, that as a development director and somebody who has, if somebody has left you in their will, you have a right to see a copy of that. So what I say is, and the truth of the matter is, if they say no, they're not going to give it to you, then they're not going to give it to you, and you just say okay. But if you have a right to ask and you have a right to have a copy of that, but like I said, I'm backing it up and saying they can always say no. So I simply say, hey, after they sign the commitment form and I get this information, that would be great. I give it a little bit of time to make sure that to see if they've made the change. They have to go either see a lawyer or make a change on their 401k or their IRA or however the beneficiary, whatever they're going to do. And then I say, hi, it's Amy Stone. It's been 6 months. I take them to coffee, or you want to, make it easier, and say, do you have I wanted to know if you could follow up and see if you could have that piece of paper for us for our files. And you just always make it professional. We just need a copy for our files. That's all.
Well, and it's probably not a conversation you have the first time you're meeting with someone.
No.
So it makes it easier once you're developing a relationship with
Absolutely.
that person.
And you've already invited them to an event. You're thanking them. You've written them thank you notes. You've already, warmed up. You've already, loved up on them a lot.
Good. Several people have asked for you to restate the name of that little board member's book that you suggested, because they've been feverishly trying to copy every morsel that you've said and not able to do so fast enough.
So the book that I bought is called The Ultimate Board Member's Book.
And our colleague Abigail Spiegel checked it out on Google, and it's there. You can Google it, and it's available for $7.75 a copy. Thank you, Abigail.
Where did you get that? I got it on Amazon. Emerson & Church is the publisher. Wherever she got it, you need to send that email out, because I spent $21 on mine.
Well, our friend Abigail is very frugal and a great
shopper.
That's right. I would send that out.
Okay. Well, speaking of sending out, people would like your contact information, because you don't have a slide with it here. And,
oh, hold on.
As well as, there you go, everyone who's been asking, as well as, just to reiterate what Becky had said, the entire recording of this webinar, as well as the PowerPoint slides, will be available both through the NATA ARC and NATA Tent and any other listservs or archives that are available. Another question, you mentioned GuideStar as a resource. GuideStar appears to provide organizational information, not individual information. Did you mean to suggest that it was a resource for researching individual donors? And if so, where's that information within the GuideStar dashboard?
So I will be very honest, and I will tell you that I give all of that to my assistant. Is that a really bad answer? That's probably that is the honest truth. I give all of that to my assistant, and my assistant put that slide together. She finds it all. Do you want me to? You want me to ask her? Give me that person's name, and I'll. Can you email me? Whoever sent me that, email me.
Yeah, we can follow up with that.
Yeah, and I'll ask my assistant.
Okay. Well, here's something that you alluded to when you talked about the powers that the development director needs to have. How do you address complaints from non-donors who dislike when donors seem to get special treatment. Our community values egalitarianism so heavily that that we don't steward donors well at all.
So I know that's so hard. That's really hard. I know. We just had a okay, so I have two answers. I have the answers that I would say among friends, and then I would have the answer that I would tell them. So it's really hard. You know what, development is, it's hard. We just had a gala here at UH, and where we tried to make it more, we tried to honor people that you wouldn't normally honor. We're trying to get away from honoring all the muckety-mucks. But the truth is, the galas are there to make money. That's what a gala is for. And you make money for, you know, when you look at your dues structure and you look at the way that any philanthropy is set up, what is it now, 5% of the people pay 95% of, give 95% of the money? I mean, that's where it is, and you have to look at your group. And I would love to say that you have to look at how much time and energy you're spending on those other people. And we all do. We all spend time and energy on the people that don't give us any money, and those people have value too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's really hard when you spend so much time on people that aren't going to give you any money, and your job is to find the money. That's what our job is. And it's walking a really politically hard line, because you know you're a congregation, so you're supposed to love everybody the same. But in our world, you need to, you know, sometimes you gotta chase the money sometimes. And it would be easier if we were a university or if we were a hospital or somewhere else. But you're a congregation, and so it's really hard. But you do need to steward your higher donors. You do need to make sure that you're taking care of the people that are actually funding your building and making sure you're alive. And you do. You just really do. And you certainly can't tell, you know, Bob Smith, who isn't paying, you know, is paying a quarter of what full dues is, and maybe Bob Smith can only pay a quarter of what full dues are, and that's okay. You still need Bob there, but by the same token, Mr. Cohen, who's the biggest donor you have, that's the guy you got to spend the time with. It's not fair. Life's not fair. I'm sorry.
As a follow-up, this comes from our colleague Alan Halpern. So if someone complained about class placement within the religious school, you can't really fix that placement, but you can talk to the school director. Is that kind of what you mean about, you know, being the advocate for and the person who intercedes on behalf of a donor in order to, you know, help that steward that donor towards greater and greater giving?
Exactly. So somebody will call me and they'll not be happy. You know, my daughter didn't get any of her friends in her class, and now I'm upset and I'm mad at everybody. So I definitely listen. I'm very empathetic. I do what I can. Of course, I talk to the religious school director. She tells me, of course, she'll have a reasonable explanation. They're reasonable people. Then I go back and I talk to, of course, I let the donor know what has happened or what the situation is, and I try to make them okay, and we see what we can work on for the following year or something. But yeah, you're just a customer service agent at that point.
Great, thank you. Can you illuminate a little bit the difference between directed versus non-directed giving, and do the way we steward donors in either of those camps differ, or are they basically the same?
How do we direct them again?
Well, somebody comes to you and says, I want to establish a music fund. I guess that would be a directed gift. They're telling you how they want their money to be used, versus somebody who says, I have money I want to give to the synagogue. or the organization or the school or fill in the blank.
Sure.
You know, are there different ways to work with each of those two types of individuals, or is the process essentially the same?
I would think for us, it's essentially the same. I mean, and the only difference would be is if the person wanting to set up the music fund would have too many strings attached. Then we would have to kind of work that out. I mean, you just have to kind of, you're a little bit more careful, I guess, with somebody who wants to set up a restricted fund. But you would handle the person, I would believe, the same. But yeah, the only thing you're careful of is that you just want to watch the strings that are being attached and making sure that it fits in with what your mission is and what you're doing.
Okay, well, thank you. And I stand corrected. There seems to be a reprint on Amazon of the Ultimate Board Members book, newly revised edition, a 1-hour guide to understanding and fulfilling your role and responsibilities, and that sells for the $21, $22 that you paid. So, you know, although Abigail's a great shopper and a wonderful person, you paid the right price.
And she found the correct one. Amy, there's been a couple questions about technical, like how do you manage the information flow in your synagogue? How do you, when members of your staff have conversations with people, are you able to track that information to be able to use that in terms of stewardship?
Okay, so first of all, there's lots of software out there. But I will tell you that the best thing we have done is we use Excel. That's it. We use Excel spreadsheets. And I got that tip from a friend of mine at RSDP, Reformed Synagogue Development Professionals, and I thought if he uses Excel, my goodness, I can use Excel. And for those of you, it was on one of my slides. Can I move my slide? Is everybody okay if I move my slides?
Go for it.
Okay. It was, all right. Yes, here it is. There's a lot of software out there that can be purchased, and I have, so if somebody had asked about starting an endowment campaign and record keeping with that, if you contact me, I will give you my cleared out. I certainly don't need my whole sheet, but I will clear it out, and I will send you this Excel spreadsheet that my assistant has set up. And it is, she's a whiz at Excel, I can't even tell you, but I will send you that Excel spreadsheet.
And then how do you train the rest of your staff, even the support staff, which is your front line in terms of talking to donors? How do you train them to get that information to you so you can get into the Excel spreadsheet?
So the conversations that I have with my donors, some of the conversations go into my Hoverware, some of it goes into Excel, some of it goes into pieces of paper. Does everybody use Hoverware?
There's a bunch of different synagogue programs.
Okay, so the conversations, if they go in letters, they go in notes, they go in that kinds of thing in their personal files. I also kept an Excel spreadsheet that's just like personal, that just is like literally their names, and next to them is a box, and my assistant said you can search by keywords. So she set that up for me in different tabs, and I've alphabetized them. That's one thing that we've set up. I keep that. Then that's all my own. Those are all my personal notes that I don't share with people. Then the other thing, I mean, like not with people, I mean anybody, like around here. Then Then the other one is all financial. This Excel spreadsheet I could share with you is all financial information, when they've paid their dues, or not dues, when they've paid their pledge, how often they want to pay their pledge. She can search and extract a varied amounts of information on that. And how did I train her? I mean, she trained me, I think.
We're actually getting a lot of questions. People would like to see the spreadsheet. So when we send out the recording to everybody, maybe we can send a copy of that spreadsheet with
Absolutely.
on there.
I'd be more than happy. Yeah,
Great.
I'll be more than happy.
Thank you. And then how did you train your support staff, since they are really the first line in terms of talking to people? How do you manage that?
So she's not the first person they talk to. I hired this assistant. She's amazing, but I don't know. I'm probably a little type A, and I talk to the people before. I'm the first person they talk to. She can certainly talk to people. She's well versed enough to talk to donors and handle them. But I talk to people. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like receptionists, even when they pick up the phone and they're having maybe just a brief exchange, that type of conversation.
You know what? I believe that they. Yeah. I think that they come that way. You hire them. You hire good people. You get good results. I don't know what to say.
I know at the time it's almost 2 o'clock Eastern time. Is there like one more thing you wish to share with everybody? I'm kind of going through the questions. It looks like we've answered most of them.
So on the end of my slideshow, are you going to share this slideshow? There's 10 questions I answered if people want to get to them.
Yeah, if you want to pick one or two, that would be great before we end.
No, I mean they can. I mean you can. They don't have to. I don't have to read them. I mean people can go through them and look at them later.
Great.
If it's too, you know what I mean. People can. They can read that. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So we'll get a copy of that. And we will send that out to everybody.
Yes.
So, perfect. So Amy, thank you. I really do appreciate all of this wonderful wisdom. Again, I apologize for the technical issues at the beginning. I'm glad it all got resolved. And this was a very informative hour. And probably within the next day or so, we will be sending this out. And then just a heads up to everybody that on March 26th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, we're going to have our next webinar on legacy giving. I'm with Leah Richmond, who is the endowment officer at the Chicago Jewish Federation, and I've heard her present before, and it's very informative, so I'm looking forward to that one as well. So on behalf of NATA, NATA, OU, Amy, really thank you for all that you did today in preparations, and we really appreciate your leadership with this. Thank you.
Thank you.